Welcome to Go Gardening. We're here at the Edwards Aquifer Authority Field Research Park. I got it all done. And I'm here with Mark Hamilton, and I'm going to ask you a few questions just briefly. What is going on here? What do you actually do here at the research park?
Well, this has really become our hub for groundwater related research as it applies to the Edwards Aquifer in this region.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's great, love it. How did it actually come to being?
So if we go back to 2019, the city of San Antonio acquired this property as part of their Edwards Aquifer Protection Program. And through a negotiation process with them, they offered to hand this property over, give this property to our conservancy, our nonprofit arm, as a property that our staff could come and do research at and have full access 24/7 so that we can do research in perpetuity. So it's been a great gift from the city for us to really better understand how the aquifer works.
Yeah, and I should have asked, where are we?
We are just off Cibolo Creek in northeast Berry County on the recharge zone of the Edwards Aquifer.
So we are on the recharge zone.
We are.
That's real important. So that goes into discovering a lot of the uses of our water when it comes down, how it's held, how it infiltrates, and then other things. What kind of other things are we doing?
So one of the really big focal points for us out here right now is to better understand what we call diffuse recharge. So you can break recharge down into a couple of things. You can call recharge that occurs in the creek beds. Like we look out here at Cibolo Creek, the water that goes into the aquifer in those creek beds, that's discrete recharge.
It's going directly down.
Right in.
Okay.
But when we have recharge occur over the land surface, in between stream beds, we call that diffuse recharge.
Okay.
So we're conducting different types of land management practices that are designed to improve and really help diffuse recharge to occur, so that slow down the runoff, give that water a little more time to infiltrate and to drop its sediment load, so when that water does make it to the creek, it doesn't carry a bunch of sediment and organic debris. It's just water without all the additives that came off the land surface, because we want to keep the soil on the land surface, not in the creek bed.
Absolutely. So that was great information, but I was wondering, how does it actually apply to maybe, or translate to maybe the homeowner? How can we do that here?
I think a lot of what we do is really designed for anybody to do on a piece of property that can be really large or really small. Perhaps some of the larger scale practices wouldn't be applicable to the average homeowner, right? Yeah. But some of the smaller things like rock dams or brush berms, things like that, might work really well in the average urban landscape. If you've got an area that's really dehydrated in your yard or in your landscape, you might be able to harvest a little bit more water, help keep that area a little more hydrated, and use a little bit less water out of your tap every week just to keep it looking nice.
Excellent. Thank you. That was great, Mark. Would you mind showing us around the place?
That'd be great.
All right.
Let's jump in the Polaris and go see what we can see.
Okay. Excellent. Let's go. Hey, Mark, where are we heading now?
So we're going to go down next to Cibolo Creek, kind of drive along the riparian zone on the property, where we have a lot of existing native grasses that actually came with the property. So we have some eastern gamma grass and a lot of inland sea oats down here.
And riparian is along the creek?
That's a good enough definition for me.
I knew what you're talking about. Thomas, tell me a little bit about what you do here.
Sure. I'm the Aquifer Sustainability Manager here at the Edwards Aquifer Authority, and primarily what it is, I'm kind of the manager of this property at the Field Research Park, but also supervise our easement monitoring team that works with the City of San Antonio's Edwards Aquifer Protection Program.
Okay, great. I want to show you a few things down here. So, this is one of my favorite plants that a homeowner can use in the shade. Now, it's somewhat in the sun, but this is inland ceos, is that
Yes,
correct?
That's correct.
What other grasses do I have around here that a homeowner can use?
Sure, we have a few other things growing here. We've got Virginia wild rye, eastern gamma grass, and the reason that these plants are located here because we're just above Cibolo Creek. We're kind of looking at it right now.
So Cibolo Creek's down that way.
Cibolo Creek's right there, so that means we're in the riparian area of Cibolo Creek. So this is an area that stays a little more shaded, a little more wet throughout the year, and so it's a comfortable place for these grasses to live.
Does it have a little bit more soil too?
Definitely more soil as well.
Okay,
So
great.
deep soil profile here. Yeah, as you mentioned, these plants would work great, in a rain garden somewhere with a little more moisture. But as you can see, we're in the midst of the drought, and they may look stressed out, but they're still surviving. And
I
they'll
still
come back
see a
with the
little
rain.
green here,
Right.
so that's always good. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
So Thomas, I got a lot of grasses here. What's the importance of all these grasses right here?
Yeah, so these grasses grown in this riparian area, they're great soil stabilizers. So they have really strong roots, especially these gamma grasses, these larger grasses. They can be sending roots down up to 10 feet into the ground. So they're
Really?
kind of holding that soil in place when these big floods come in here. They catch the sediment, help deposit new soil here to grow in, creates fertility.
So if I had this in my yard, I could actually slow down erosion on
Sure.
steep slopes too. That'd be really good to use on that.
Yeah, these plants, they could, if you can get them in the ground there, get them established, they would grow very big, and start to hold back sediment, start to hold back organic matter, and be very hardy in a lot of conditions.
And so a lot of these again are the eastern gamma grass, the inland ceos,
ceos.
the Virginia grass that we talked about, and some forbs, different forbs. We had some mallow
Exactly.
that we saw here early. So a little mix and match. That's what we want to control erosion and build up soil. So many homeowners don't have any soil, but that would help them out.
Exactly.
All right, great. All right, Thomas, we have a type of, what do we call this?
So this is called one rock dams.
One rock
So
dams,
these are
okay.
erosion control structures just built from rocks. They're called one rock dam just because they're one rock high.
Uh-huh.
And so
Oh, so yeah, they're not very high, they're very easy. You can lay them out pretty much with a wheelbarrow and
right,
put 'em
yeah, placed here by hand. So basically we're in kind of a drainage channel here. It's a man-made drainage channel, but it could be used in a
Water's coming down here, maybe
any
kind of fast, so we're slowing it down. So speed is the enemy of the landscape, causes a lot more erosion.
Right.
So we want to slow it down.
Slowing down velocity, collecting sediment. Over time, a structure like this could even just disappear under the sediment that it collects.
Oh, and speaking of sediment, I see some plants and some grasses on here. So you put some more seed down
Yes.
in order to catch or grow some more plants. And what do the plants do?
So the plants are going to help stabilize soil.
There you go.
They're going to help shade these structures, bring in plant diversity, of course, just lift up this entire ecosystem.
There you go. We got some refuge right there. Some leaves collecting already. It's doing its job.
Collecting organic matter.
Great. Thank you. So Thomas, this caught my eye here with a solar panel. What do we got going on here?
So what this is we have some instrumentation here. It's a pressure transducer, which is at the end of this black line here and goes down into our swell. And what that will do is it'll tell us how deep the water is in the swell when it actually fills during a rain event.
Oh, so it's not doing it right now, or is it?
It's reading right now, but it's telling us there's no water.
There's
in it
no
right
water in there. So, but when the water comes down behind me and comes and fills this berm here, this bioswale, as we like to say, they will tell you how much water is coming in here.
It'll tell us what the water level was in here, and then from that information, we should be able to estimate how much water actually infiltrated into this swell.
Into the swell and then eventually into the ground
Yes.
and into the creek.
Exactly.
All right, wonderful. So Thomas, we got a bigger swale here, a bigger bioswale. We could still do this for a homeowner, but it's going to be a little bit bigger and they need a little bit more property on that. So we seeded this with native grasses. What's all this brush here in front?
So all this brush was cut from the woodland around us, and it's here to try to prevent deer from being on here and eating our new vegetation that's coming up.
Oh, so not necessarily on these trees we're going to talk about, but on the grasses. Hopefully.
Yes.
Protect some of the grasses over
Protect the grasses, protect the forbs that are coming up.
Much more conventional prevention against deer is these fences.
Yep, tree cages.
I see 2, 3 great understory species, and I always talk about understory because we have lots of big trees that are left on properties, but not so much understory. So I got one of my favorite, Texas mulberry, Mexican plum, and a peach tree on here.
Right.
So that's great. What other ones do we have that you have tested out here?
Oh, we've got Blanco crabapple, we've got gold ball lead tree. We have more traditional species, just like our Texas persimmon that's already growing out here, our red oaks that are already growing out here. Eve's necklace is another one. So
yep.
Good variety of trees that are experimenting.
And you need to protect them all from the deer.
Yep, each one, they're either going to eat them or they'll rub their antlers on them. So.
And how much water do you need to put on them?
So they do need irrigation to get established. If you're planting a tree that comes out of a
Even though they're native, you got to put irrigation on.
Right.
All right. Excellent. I'd like to thank Mark Hamilton, Thomas, Marcella for their wonderful hospitality here at the Edwards Aquifer Authority Field Research Park. I got it right. So I just want to know the audience out there, how can we take all this wonderful information that we've got today and then use it for them? How can they translate it?
Maybe it starts with just being familiar with your own landscape. Spend some time in your yard. Spend some time when it's raining, see where the water goes. Observe where the sun shines and where you have shade. And start thinking about, this is how my landscape behaves. Maybe these are good areas for this practice or that practice. If you have an area with concentrated runoff, maybe you want to think about laying some rock structure across there and slowing down that runoff. Maybe you want to put some deep-rooted grasses in that spot to hold that soil in place. But I think it all starts with being familiar with your landscape so you can make informed decisions about how you take your next steps.
That's excellent, excellent. Thank you both, really appreciate it. Just a reminder to everyone, fall is for planting. So go out and go gardening.
So, how does enjoying the many beautiful parks and natural areas located in the Trinity Glen Rose Groundwater Conservation District help protect the clean water stored in the Trinity Aquifer? You can learn more at trinityglenrose.com/pollution prevention.
Welcome everyone to Go Gardening. This is Mark Peterson and I'm with Jana and we're at her house and it's located near McAllister Park, and we're going to go over and look at all the wonderful plants she has and some of the unique techniques she has done for her plants and her landscape. But first, let's talk about that little sign behind you. You have all these wonderful awards and citations.
So the first thing we did is I was very interested in the larval food for butterflies. So I started planting all the plants for the caterpillars. And that kind of developed into,
So that's
course,
that
monarch.
first one underneath
Right.
there, that monarch way station.
right. So people think that it's just monarchs need only milkweed, but actually there's a lot of different plants that caterpillars need. Every butterfly has its own
Yeah,
food.
so the youngster...
what we did is we planted various milkweeds. We have 4 or 5 different kinds. A lot of them become dormant in the summer, and so we also have some tropical milkweed with monarchs at this moment.
Yeah. That's
Anyways, but
fabulous. We're right now, this time, we're experiencing.
you'll be able to even see them.
Yeah.
So the hardest one to get, I don't think is offered anymore, and that's the Texas wildscapes. They required that we do a Google map of our entire yard, put in where each plant was, and they actually sent a critique. And so they gave me an A for diversity.
Well, that's good.
Yes, but there were a few, because when I moved here, I didn't want to take out established things. So we did have some things that they thought we should remove that were invasive plants.
So
I
maybe some
slowly
non-native
moved them.
invasive stuff?
Right,
Yeah,
like
okay.
ligustrum.
Okay.
And so we took some things out slowly, and I had the red tip patinas. And so I slowly removed them, but I didn't want to just like bare in the yard. You want some shade.
Right, right. As I always tell people, small bites.
Right.
It chews a lot easier. You can get rid of things at a small amount of time.
So you wanted to talk a
So
little
let's
bit
just
about
look
this.
a little bit about what you did in the front yard.
So,
So all this area was Bermuda grass, and you had a very effective method of getting rid of the Bermuda grass and reestablishing native plants, flowering plants, and everything. So tell me a little bit about what you did, because I think people are going to be very surprised.
right. It's actually super easy and effective. So this little area here was the latest area of the yard for me to convert from Bermuda.
So this is the last one we
right.
just did.
And I just did that last year. And what I did is I put mulch down about 5 inches thick, right on top of the Bermuda.
So
and it's actually good to do it in a wet time of year when the Bermuda's active even.
Okay. So there were no chemicals. You didn't
Nothing.
lay any cardboard or newspaper or
Nothing.
anything. We just put the mulch right on top.
I mow the Bermuda,
Okay. All
put
right.
the mulch on top, and then I wait. And about every couple weeks, I look for where Bermuda's sticking up through the mulch. That's why you don't want to do too big of an area. This was good for me to handle.
Okay.
And so-
Again, little bites.
Right. So then when I'd see strands of Bermuda coming up, sometimes it's stressed and sends a long runner under the mulch. But because it's so stressed from the mulch, you can pull it out real easy. And I make sure I manage it. And then if a piece of Bermuda is kind of a clump growing, I just take mulch from where there's no Bermuda showing and pile it on top. And literally within less than 2 months, you have no Bermuda.
That's what I was going to ask you. How long did it take?
Very short time. But it's better if you do it during the rainy season, like spring,
Oh,
because so that it's trying to grow.
it's trying to grow, so it's using up all its food reserves, but it can't get any new ones because you
Right.
got it smothered,
and
and so it's going to die.
So there's another super benefit to this. While you've got no other competition, I was able to get packets of seeds that maybe wouldn't grow at all. And like over in the other side of the yard where you can't see because it's fairly dormant, one package of foxglove penstemon seeds, and I have a patch about 10 feet around of beautiful foxglove penstemons, just because I put it down when there was the mulch, right at the same time as I was doing the Bermuda.
So that was good. You put it underneath.
No, I just sprinkled it
You
right
just
on
sprinkled
top.
it right
Because
on
you're
top,
kinda
right on top
stirring
of
it
the
up.
mulch.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then this area, it really doesn't look like much right
Yeah.
now, and a lot of the yard, but I have everything seeded in
But we have a
blue
lot of
curls,
annual-
wildflowers,
Uh-huh.
annual wine cups, Texas Star, and so they're currently disappeared. But the nice thing is, come about February, everything will be green because the wildflower babies are coming up.
So these are a lot of the native wildflowers.
Right.
And you got them from seed.
Right.
Anywhere special?
I usually get them up for Native American seed up in
There.
Junction.
Okay. Excellent one.
Yes. And so then they just reseed every year.
Oh, there you go.
So like if you had come by here in June, there'd be dead flowers this high.
Okay.
And you got to leave them. And we put a
I
sign
was
out
gonna
front
say,
that says
it's
pollinator garden.
All right. Aesthetically well, not so much pleasing, but very important.
But you got to let them take that last couple weeks to go to seed. And then once they've done that, I usually I try not to pull them up because I like the roots in the ground. So I usually take clippers and clip things, or I wait till they completely fall over.
Okay, a nice
and
head
then I
shears,
throw
maybe.
them in the bushes and mulch everything.
Oh, look, excellent. Okay. Wow, Jana, this is amazing. This was really all just grass and a couple of trees?
It was.
This is amazing. It's totally different. And you did this all with your family's help. And tell me how you did that.
Well, so the first thing that we did is my son and I and his wife, we laid out hoses and ropes, and we kind of looked at what it would be a good perimeter. And you'll notice how it kind of looks like creeks.
Yeah.
And so as we walked around, we checked the shapes to make sure there were no weird angles, and we kind of made it look natural. Then we just laid down newspaper and sand, and we got 6 tons.
6 tons of these flagstones.
And so then they would bring them and lay them around me. We cut no stones.
Okay.
And all we did was they'd bring stones and I'd look at what might be a good next one. What might be a good next one.
So you just did it by eye.
Yeah.
You just look at each one and place it in there.
We kind of started at the edges, so you moved in.
And so underneath is just
sand.
Newspaper and sand.
Correct. And it's been in for a decade.
A decade with no problems whatsoever.
No. And now occasionally on wet years we vinegar.
So,
I
taking
use
out
the 20% vinegar in a spray bottle.
Yeah.
And I mist whatever plants are coming up.
Okay, so you do that a little
about
proactively.
every year or two we brush in some granite.
Okay.
But you'll notice over here, this turns out to be a Mexican method, but I place stones instead of granite, and I'm actually thinking in some areas that wash out more to do that. And that has lasted like 6 years without having to put any granite in.
Okay. Well, let's look at some of the beds and look at some of the plants.
Sounds good.
Shall we? Okay. This is a wonderful example of a little Texas hill country forest on that. Behind me, we have a escarpment black cherry. And over this way, we have a walnut, Texas walnut. But I want to show the audience a little bit about what you've done over here.
Sounds
and
good.
then you can tell me exactly what y'all did. But this is classic forest. Overstory, understory, herbaceous material. So who helped you with the species and the planning of it all?
So I'm friends with Debbie Reed. She was one of the founding people of the Master Naturalist and a city arborist.
Yeah.
And so we were looking to recreate how the hill country was before the settlers came in. And so the hill country, of course it did have all the different levels, but we were not just oak trees. We had the escarpment cherry and the walnuts. And so a lot of those were cut down for building, and they haven't been able to establish because of a lot of deer, and it's been harder, and people don't know about them, so they're not planting them.
Right. This is one of my favorite ones. This is kidney wood.
And it has beautiful flowers quite a bit of the year.
And what about the flowers?
I don't know.
Very aromatic.
Yes.
Yeah, very scentful. So this is just, I want to show everybody, what's some of the other species
So
we
we
have here?
also have kind of in the middle there, we have wafer ash, and that is the larval food for one of our swallowtail butterflies. We also have dogwood, which has beautiful blooms.
Rough leaf dogwood.
Right, and at the end here is Mexican buckeye, which like our redbud, it gets pink flowers before it gets leaves.
Okay.
So, and it has none of this has needed any
It's one of the
water.
harbingers of spring. So
Yes.
the redbud and the Mexican buckeye.
Yeah.
Those are two that I look forward to, and I know it's going to be springtime. Wow, that's an interesting tree. Is that a buckeye? You don't often see true buckeyes.
That's a Texas red buckeye, and it's very interesting, its adaptation. In the dead of summer, it loses all its leaves to conserve water. But in the springtime, its flowers are literally a foot long.
Really?
Bright red spikes of flowers, perfect for all the pollinators.
You may not know that, but there's also a big yellow one
Wow.
in Texas, and it's called a Texas buckeye.
Ah.
So it's very, very different. This is so relaxing, Jana. Tell me a little bit about this wonderful pool that you created.
So this is a 1,500-gallon pond. It's 4 feet deep, and all the plants are native. And what I find to be the most amazing is that how little water it uses. Now, this pond is mostly shaded, but it used only about 5 minutes of water a couple times a week in the dead of summer, and in the winter, no water. And I had it created where they put a rock for me to sit and put my feet in the water, and then we had another rock put in for my dog to be able to stand in. But it's actually designed as an eco swimming pool. It was put in by Vivid Ponds, who have water gems. And so it's got a swimming pool pump, and the water comes through. And this is a bog in the back, so the water comes up through 4 feet of gravel.
Right, so the water's not coming up, it's coming underneath, and then it's coming up through the gravel.
Right, and as it comes through the gravel, a lot of the nitrogens are removed and the plant roots absorb it. So I don't even have any algae.
So with the shade and the filtration, you don't have any algae.
And then we put in a little mosquito fish, I think they're called gambuzas.
Yeah.
And so they also eat mosquito larvae, so this isn't producing any mosquitoes.
Right. And then you said that this pond uses less water than one of the bigger beds that you created.
That's correct. A 10 by 10 bed with native plants uses more water than this pond has used.
Wow, that's really amazing.
It's phenomenal. I was very shocked.
Thanks everyone for watching Go Gardening. Jana, do you have any final thoughts on, particularly about the pond?
Yes, one of the things I forgot to mention is how much wildlife that pond attracts. We have leopard frogs, toads, dragonflies are laying their eggs and having larvae, several species. We have, when the birds are migrating, it seems that the pond creates the right atmosphere for flocks of warblers and other unusual birds to come through. Even hummingbirds bathe in our waterfall.
That's great. Everyone, be like Jana and get out there and go gardening. Thank you.
Litter goes with the flow. Join the San Antonio River Authority in protecting area creeks and the river. Don't let litter trash your river. Let's all be river proud.